Hello, and welcome to another ACCA video, where in today's video, we're going to be going through how to pass your ACCA SBL examination with 61 first time, and also doing an option paper on top of that. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Betsy today, who, for the purposes of the title of the video, got 61, passed first time, and also did an option paper. So Betsy, feel free to introduce yourself to the students who are tuning in today.
Okay. Hi, James. Thanks for having me. My name is Betsy Oji of Webu. I'm an ACCA member, as you can already tell. I did write the SBL paper, as James rightly said, with another paper, APM. That was my optional paper. And I was very grateful to have passed it once, as well as, passed it at least good enough in both papers. So, yeah. So, thank you guys for joining the video. I hope you enjoy our video.
Pen and paper at the ready, because what we're going to go through today is, if Betsy had to do the SBL exam again, what would you do the same? What would you change from there? So what I've done for you as well is I've left Betsy's details in the description of the video. Leave us a comment if you've got any questions about ACCA SBL. But Betsy, kick us off for today's video. Where would you start off if you had to do the ACCA SBL exam again? What would you do?
Okay, well, for SBL, I mean, we already know that SBL is more or less a massive case study paper. It really is a paper that encompasses every other ACCA paper. So, like you, or maybe unlike you rather, I didn't actually start the ACCA from the very beginning. So that's something that was kind of peculiar to my journey. I had done a different exam and had to add more papers with the ACCA to eventually qualify, right? Yeah. So what this meant was I didn't have that rudimentary, background for every other ACCA paper as, someone who had done all 13 of them would probably, possibly have, right? So of course, what this meant was I had to understand the syllabus, just literally understand the SBL syllabus from the very beginning. Like, okay, what does this entail? What are all the different aspects of the syllabus that I'll be tested on? How many other papers would likely feed directly into this? Which brings me to my point of being, joining it with a paper like APM, right? So that's something I got to understand from the syllabus. Looking at the nature of the syllabus of SBL, I could tell that most of it would kind of coincide a bit with like some management, accounting, performance management here and there, a bit of audit, a bit of SBR even, all tested in there. So what I tried to do was merge it rightly with a paper like APM. So that's something I would do again because it helped me seeing that APM was, of course, rather performance management. It kind of meant that I could join them both together, and it wouldn't be like I was studying two totally distinct papers. So that was cool because I had a very little time to pass both of them. So yeah, so that's something I would do again.
Lovely.
Yeah, I've kind of said two things now. One was to really understand the syllabus, and second was to merge it with a paper like APM.
I know.
Now, yeah, what else would I possibly do differently? Well, I don't know that this one was in my control, which is the time, right? The time to study. I would say if you have a paper like SBL, you want to give it time though. If you're not under any kind of pressure to complete your papers, before a particular timeline or whatever it is, I would say take it alone. That's I would really recommend.
I'll see. So just to be crystal clear to the viewers, you probably were going to get caught by the 7-year rule, I think it was, where for anyone who isn't aware, that's when you start doing your first strategic paper. So that's SBR usually. You've then got 7 years to pass SBR and SBL and your 2 option papers. And look, people have different circumstances in their lives. But if you're reaching that 7 years and you go over the 7 years, you then have to go back and do them all again on there. So just to be crystal clear, if you've got time, do SBL by itself. But if you haven't, just be aware of that rule. I think that's a really good point, first of all, to make on there, Betsy.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, that could be one scenario, right, where you could be under a crunch. But for someone like me as well, or someone like those of us in Canada, which is where I'm at that time, we wanted to also use our ACCA to get the CPA, right? So yeah, so that's another possibility of a time where you could be under crunch, right? Yeah. So you're trying to like quickly complete one exam so that it could help you get another certification in some other country. Maybe you're in Australia, Nigeria, wherever else you are, right? So watching this video from. So of course, what James and I are just saying is if you have all the time in quotes in the world to take your papers, then please do your strategic papers, alone and, for a particular exam period so that you can give it the focus that it needs. That's something I didn't have. Probably I would have scored like a 70 or an 80, who knows, right? But I can
Wow.
never now, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you can go back and do the exam again if you want to, but let's
Okay.
let's think back to that syllabus, past papers, the CB platform. What as a student who's going to be doing SBL maybe for the first time, what have they got to do to pass this exam?
Okay. Now for SBL, I'm gonna assume that a lot of students are now having to do it online. I know a couple of places might still be using the paper, but for the purpose of this video, I'll just kind of assume that you're doing it online.
Majority are all online. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So okay, so if you're doing it online, a paper like SBL is gonna give you like I don't know, a 14-page exhibit of some sort. So it's going to be a lot of information. That's something to note. A lot of information about one entity, though. So it's going to be one company you're, going to be asked to analyze, right? Or evaluate, or, different kind of scenarios relating to that one specific company. I beg your pardon. So, yeah. So you're going to have one company, you're going to have a lot of information relating to that company. Secondly, you're going to have different forms of exhibits that are supposed to help you come up to some kind of opinion or some kind of advice, depending on your role, again, which is why whenever I refer to SBL, I say role play. Just think of yourself like an actor, really, like you're being brought in here to, look at a lot of information and give some form of advice, either internally, as you mean you work in that company per your role, or externally, right? Maybe you're an audit client, or sorry, an auditor to your audit clients, or kind of a consultant, management consultant, or whatever it is, right? So yeah, so it's important rather that you understand your role. That's the first thing, right? So when you pick up those exhibits, you want to read through them with the understanding that you are not on the side of the company, assuming you were brought in as an external consultant. So you have to understand your role. Your role is very important to even how you word your answers, right? Because if you're sitting as someone inside, you should be saying, we should do this, right? For instance, as opposed to, oh, I advise ABC Limited to do so, because you work here, right? You shouldn't be making it look like you're not, part of that company. That's just one example of how the role affects how you interpret the question. I think something else I would say is to note the verbs that are used in those questions. Very important for a paper like SBL because they test several skills, right? So for instance, you're asked to analyze and explain, or you're asked to interpret, you're asked to explain, you're asked to describe, you're asked, different kind of verbs that could be used, or even just maybe, for instance, mention a couple of things, right? So it's very important, what verb is being used here, how many verbs even are in one question, so that you can easily, annotate them as you go, so that you don't miss out the marks for every single requirement.
Yeah, well, you'll be answering the full amount that is set for that question, because the external examiners, they all say that some students only answer half of what is actually required. So you only could be getting 8 out of 16, which it's a time pressured exam. You've already touched on applying back to the scenario, using the company names, all these things. If you don't do it in your exam, you're highly unlikely not to get that 50 plus.
Exactly, and you want that 50 marks because again, SBL is so wide. I mean, it's not an exam I even recommend taking twice. I honestly mean it. It's not like there's any exam I would want you to take twice, but considering how much time it actually takes to even prepare for a paper like SBL, it's kind of recommended that you just go in once and hope to get it out and get out your 50 plus and just get out of that exam. So how best can you do this? Of course, you have to plan your time, right? I don't know if we have mentioned at any point, it's a 4-hour paper. So that tells you how significant, how much time you have to, allot to such a paper when you're preparing for it, as well as when you're in the exam hall itself. So now you're sitting down in the exam hall and you have 4 hours to sit. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
It means you have to really plan how much time you need to read the paper itself, understand it. I would just recommend 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes to actually go through all the exhibits, all the, questions relating to the exhibits. Then, of course, start to draft your answers. After drafting your answers, then, of course, you can go down to, putting in the answers into the boxes that are provided. Yeah.
Exactly. I think the key word there being planned. Every SBL student I've ever spoken to, they always say, if I have a decent plan at the start, I've picked up on the buzzwords, the keywords and the requirements, so much more better prepared, versus what always tends to happen is students write as much as they can But what they find is they write as much as they can, but they don't actually get any marks for it on there. So I know it'll be in your mind where you're going, James, if I plan, I'm wasting time in the exam. It's not a waste at all, because you're getting that sort of alignment at the start that then you can apply when you're going through, right, I've got 16 marks here, I've got to get 8 points, these are my 8 buzzwords, and then you can start to work it through on there.
Exactly.
Spot on. And just to highlight as well, it's currently at a 4-hour examination, which you think, oh my word, how do I go about that? But in September 2023, I believe it is, it's going down to 3.25, as they've currently stated, and they're going to have some pre-release information. But the same principles still apply no matter what year you are watching this video on, just to reassure anyone going, that's not my exam on there. We're on top of it. It's all good on there. But we touched on a couple of other areas. What about time management, preparation for the exam, past papers? What sort of floods back into your mind that would be good practice for an SBL student?
Yes, I would suggest, if you're going to be taking an SBL paper, to at least have one time where you have literally attempted one past paper. This is something I highly recommend for a paper like SBL, but I also don't recommend doing a lot of papers, because again, no case can be repeated, right? So it's very important to say this. While you might have like an SBR that might, kind of do something similar to what has been done before, SBL is so, I don't know how they come up with those exams, by the way, because literally everyone has something specific it's testing. It might just be testing risk management, it might be testing some kind of independence of non-executive directors, it could be testing anything actually. So you have to understand that it's important to practice at least one. I always say this, even on my channel, I say this a lot, practice it once at least, just to get yourself like in the mood of it and really see how best you can, give the answers back when you are now in a timed exam condition, right? Yeah. So, and another thing I would also say is to, of course, grade yourself. If you have the luxury, or someone who would I say, someone who already takes that paper, a coach or some kind of mentor, have them critique your answer. By the way, very recently, someone reached out to me. She wanted me to be that person for her. It was, of course, quite difficult for me to do that for everyone, that reaches out. But this particular person was quite interesting because she had failed it like, I think, 3 times now. So I wanted to really help, right? So yeah, so she just took the last exam. And what I noticed, unlike other students who always run out of time, her own problem was that she would always have so much more time at the end of the exam. Like, that's surprising, right? So you can see that you can actually attempt at a paper like SBL and not have like enough words, or the way to explain your answers enough to fill the time that is required for such an exam. So she would literally leave the hall with like 30 minutes extra or like 15 minutes more. So a kind of student like that, I don't know, someone might be watching this and also have that problem, right? So what does that tell you? It tells you that you're not even sufficiently addressing what the examiners want. You're not using as much wordings, is probably set in English, right? But I mean, your English is not maybe good enough to really expand what you're trying to say. So you use shorter sentences and think you've communicated the point enough, but you really haven't.
No,
so
that's the detail.
Not with enough detail, right? So what I would advise in a situation like that, of course, as you go along the exhibits, keep highlighting what you think is important and put them into your answer. Again, I'm assuming you're doing this online, so you pick, literally Control C that entire line that you think is important, paste it into your work, and as you go, you now begin to fill in with more English. Like you read, maybe you had said, what can I say now? Maybe they had given an example and said the company was about to acquire another company or something like that. That's something important, right? So once you grab that line, you put it into your answer spot and you begin to expand on that. It's easier than if you were just to form the words without any kind of reference to anywhere else. So yeah, so those were some of the examples I had given her to kind of help her build her confidence, in explaining and giving as much detail as the questions require. And I think it might be helpful for someone else. Then of course, if you have the opposite problem where you put in too much information than is needed, so you run out of time, no, you don't want to do that. So for someone like that, I'll advise you to stick to the time, like literally allot the time for the paper with the time that you have for each question. So that way you know when to like literally leave one exhibit and move to the other, so that you don't go with all the information, especially if you love that particular topic. Maybe it's testing auditors independence and that's all you're like, oh, I want to go feed this in. No,
I know.
You have to stop. You have to move to the next one. Yeah, something like that. So that,
you're absolutely spot on, because that's students answering a question that they want to answer versus what they're being asked for on there. So highly recommend that tip, first of all. And also to add to that, ACCA put on their website that students who have done the ethics and professional skills module before they do SBL are more likely to pass. So maybe you're watching this video and you're going, oh my word, I failed it a couple of times, James. Put that on your list to go away from today's video, because the stats tell you, they say the whole list of all the students who do it, these are the students who have done their ethics, these are the students they haven't, and the students that have done the ethics are more likely to pass.
Yeah. And I think that's actually true because well, I guess in this case I would say I didn't do my ethics again, time crunch. I couldn't do my ethics before SBL, but I agree with you because when I was doing my ethics, of course, after the fact now, but it was kind of, oh my gosh, this is just like SBL, right? Something like that. I got that feeling a bit like, oh, this would have probably been helpful for SBL. Yeah. So of course, please, if you haven't even attempted any of this, then please take that advice, take it to the bank. It's important that you do it before SBL. Yeah.
Definitely. And if a student's watching this, I'd always say that if you've maybe had a bit of a gap, 6 months or a year when you're coming onto this exam, have a look at some of the technical articles on ACCA's website, and also really home in on the core text, the tuition, because as you said, it's such a wide syllabus where they've got different theories like pestle they could throw in there. It's all scenario based. So if you don't refer back to the scenario, you're not going to pass this examination on there and demonstrating your technical knowledge.
That's really true. Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. I kind of think as well, like even while you go through your models, it's important not to, stress yourself too much for the models because it happens to, I mean, even the best of us, we kind of want to, oh my gosh, what does this Potter's diamond say? Or what does the, yeah, while it's good to know what those, each component of those models are, it's also important to, like James said, it's the scenario. Keep your thoughts to what the scenario is saying. You can use your little knowledge of the model to expand on it, but it's important not to think model first, then scenario later. No, it's the opposite way. You want to give priority to the case, the details that are contained in the case. If it's not in there, don't even assume it. Don't bring it in from anywhere because you're not going to be scored for that. You get no marks, for something that is just inferred rather than what has been actually said in the case. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And if I was doing SBL myself, I'd get on the CBE platform, the computer-based examination platform on ACCA's website, and I would do questions on there because then I'd get used to the system and the process. It's going to save me a load of time, like you said, copy and pasting it over and making sure I've put in enough points on there.
Yeah, exactly.
That will definitely be top of my list on there. But Betsy, are there any other SBL top tips that are coming to your mind that a student has to know for today's video that you couldn't sleep tonight without telling them?
Well, I would just want to prioritize timing because, again, like we have said, you could either run out of time or have too much time. So it's important to time yourself. Even getting to the exam on time, literally on that exam day, is very important. It's also important to know who you are in the case. Very important as well. Note your state. Know who are you in the company. Are you outside the company? Again, it's also important for you to what's the word now? I said the verbs. Note each verb in the case. Know how each of them have how much points each of them have so that you are addressing the question fully. As you expand your points, of course, please use the words that will help you get those professional marks. I'm going to talk a bit about the professional marks because they are 20% of the paper. A lot of people don't emphasize them. We're talking about your commercial acumen, you're talking about professionalism, evaluation skills, all of these analytical skills coming as well. So it's also important that you note how to grab those marks. Sometimes it could just be the wordings you use. Maybe you're making a question, you're answering a question relating to some kind of a company that is a family-owned company. The kind of terminologies you use would show that you understand that family-owned businesses want to preserve their heritage. They're not really interested in sharing more or less like their values with the entire world. So some of the strategies that maybe a board is recommending might not sit well with a family company vis-a-vis a company that is listed that wants to just grab up all the profit here and there. So so all of that, how it shows your commercial acumen. In analyzing or evaluating, you want to also have a balanced view. It's very important whenever you're giving some kind of opinion, you want to be sure not to be too extreme to one direction,
Yeah.
Yeah, look at it from a balance point, then of course you can make your recommendation. That way the examiner knows that you used all of the information that was provided in the case. You're not just, going one direction to say, oh no, this is a very bad strategy, don't go there. No, you can say, this strategy could help the company, expand their market share, competitive advantage. However, they could lose the control, as if it was a family-owned company, if they pursue this strategy, something like that. That would show that, okay, you know what it means to really, want to stick to your family business rather than, listing it out there. So I'm just giving an example, but it could be any.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it could be
exactly. Well, this will be going through the student's mind when they're doing the past papers. They go, I've got to be specific to whatever type of business. And the other thing to be aware of with these questions, it's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows and everything's fantastic. Expect there are going to be things that have gone wrong or adjustments that need to be done, calculations, explaining it, communicating it. These are all the fundamentals that are going to get you the 50 plus and passed through SBL, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. So that's another thing I'm going to say. Sometimes some questions could be very what's the word now, numeric. I think that's the word. So you could just see a lot of draft papers, maybe a statement of profit and loss here, or some kind of balance sheet, or whatever it is, or some kind of analytics, right? Or they're about to list the share, okay, different kinds of calculations of share prices or whatever it is. So it throws people off. Some people who are not number people, if you get what I mean, though every accounting to be a number person, but assuming that you struggle with so much numeric information, please note that hardly would SBL rather have you doing so much computations. Half the time they already gave you, like, the answer is literally in that question. So for instance, they're asking you to critique, again, I'll use the share price computation example, and then you're looking through it and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I expected to do here? Because you just see numbers, right? But if you can just really breathe in and take a step back to see how much information has already been provided, like it's already been computed, they're just asking you to critique maybe the method that was used to come up with those numbers. So half the time you will want to really be in a relaxed state when you're taking SBL, because the answers are really in those cases. It's just that they scare us when we see them, because of course it's a lot of information which can scare anyone.
Well, it's think of it as a methodical approach. You've got requirement A, B, C, and D, and usually as you go through the scenario, it's A at the start, then on to B, and just like that. So, but it's going to come with question practice, doing it to time, and then that will benefit you in the long run as well when it comes to game day, when you've got to sit down and do the examination on there. But Betsy, I must say, thank you so much for all of your tips, all of your insights and sharing today, because I know it's definitely going to help ACCA students around the world pass their examinations. So thank you very much, everyone who's tuned in today. Have you enjoyed your first recording, Betsy, on the channel?
Yes, I have. It's really nice to be here. Thank you, James, for all you do for all of us. It's really good helping to, like, of course, help the community out there, the ACCA student community. And I'm hoping that, our tips here and there could help at least a couple of people nail their next SBL paper.
Definitely. Well, I know you've been showing off your certificate behind you throughout the whole recording, but I'll mention it now whilst we're at the end of the video on there. But I've put all of Betsy's details, guys, in the bottom of this video. So be sure to subscribe over there, along with our channel on here, so you don't miss out on any future videos. And of course, the tips today were surely worth a massive like on the video, so that you get to see all the other ones that come up that could, as we said, be the difference in just getting that 50 plus, getting you over the line. And so you can have a lovely certificate behind you, just like Betsy on there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you in another video. Thank you, Betsy.
Yeah. Bye. Bye, everyone.